one. This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, we salute the Hollywood saviors, the superhero genre. Over the course of the pandemic, it has become apparent that the only thing keeping movie theaters afloat are the stories coming out of both the Marvel and DC cinematic universes. Over the next hour, we'll discuss the phenomenon and the rise of the superhero film and how this once fringe art form has grown to dominate the motion picture industry. We'll also spotlight the 5 richest superheroes. Yeah. We'll also be joined by fellow critic and comic enthusiast, Emmanuel Noisette, better known as the E-Man, and my man, Charles Kirkland Jr. We'll have all that and more in episode 494, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon, and today I'm going to get started by pretty much saying I am out of my depth. I never read a comic book. Charles always teases me because the only one I ever read was Archie and Riverdale, and they're not making those movies. That's on the CW, so they ain't really. I'm just being real. I mean, that's it. I was out in the streets, man. I ain't got no time for no comic books, man. I wasn't reading Iron Man I wasn't doing any of that stuff.
I mean, a Superman, something.
Nah, bro. I was reading Riverdale, man, because I was a lover. I wasn't trying to be all that. But anyway, we have an amazing show today, and I love when I bring folks on who really understand this. And I always tell people, right? And they say, "Well, Tim, you never read the comics?" I say, "Dude, I'm a film critic. I review whatever you put on the screen, right? So if it's a stinky Batman movie from 1989, a Batman movie from 2005, I'm gonna watch them all because that's what I do, right? But y'all guys have an understanding. So it's funny when I go to the movies now, and I usually sit in what I call nerd row, right? So it's like Charles, several of my other friends who are really like Julian, Shireen, all of these comic folks, and they giggling. I'm like, well, what's going on? Oh, you read the comic book? I'm like, man, screw all you comic snobs right now. Y'all were nerds when I was kids, and now they making these movies, and y'all all elevated and stuff. Bump all of y'all.
I'm gonna help you. Like, Tim, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna give you a secret a little later. I'm gonna help you out. Trust me.
You're gonna help me out. All right, cool.
I got you.
Thank you. Thank you. Because Charles never tried to help me out. Charles is supposed to laugh at me.
I just laugh at him. Because the only thing worse than reading Archie is like reading Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig comic books that used to come out back in the day. I think that's the only worst. That's the only thing that's worse.
You got that bubblegum reading material.
Bump both of y'all, man. All right, so here we go, man. Let's jump into it. I was telling somebody I've been on a couple of shows this week, and this show topic today came up because I've noticed this pattern, especially over the last 6 months, right? We'll go along and movies will come out and nobody was going to the movies, man. These movies were making like they were going copper in the theater. They weren't going platinum or gold. They were going copper and bronze, right? And suddenly, here comes Spider-Man No Way Home. $1 billion. Woo, everybody's back. And then Spider-Man faded out and crickets, like Marry Me, Uncharted. Nobody's going to see any of these movies. And then all of a sudden, the Batman comes out. Boom, cinematic explosion. My prediction is that the theaters are going to go quiet again until the first week of May when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness drops. Boom! People will come back again. So we need to talk about, in this time right now, that theaters are struggling not just to stay afloat, but to draw people back in, that the only steady material that keeps them coming back are these fantastic superhero stories now, which I remember 40 years ago watching Flash Gordon and She-Hulk. These movies were terrible. They were like jokes back in the day before the technology came along. And thank God for Blade, because Blade doesn't get enough love today. But Blade really was the precursor to the modern era of the superhero. So let me just introduce, first of all, I've told you guys that Emmanuel Noisette, we just gave him his flowers, a phrase which I can't stand, but I just felt in this case, we giving it to him because he is joining the Black Reel Award Voting Academy, which is a tremendous honor for you, brother. It really is, man, because trust me, you should see some of the responses to some of the other people. Woo! Yes, you and E are in the same club now. Charles Kirkland, who's been in the club for a minute, I'm not going to talk about Charles. We talk about Charles and praise him all the time. Charles Kirkland, comic nerd, him and E should get along fine in this whole segment. So for the both of you guys, what have you noticed to my original, my opening thesis about how over the course of the last, 18 to 24 months that we have seen consistently, whether it's the Eternals, people will come out, even if they don't make explosive money. People came out to see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten?
Shang-Chi,
Shang-Chi, very good.
Spider-Man.
You're learning.
Whatever, man. Stop hating. So talk to me, man. E, since you're the guest, man, what are you feeling about this this renaissance of the superhero genre in Hollywood right now?
So, I mean, we could talk about this from many different perspectives, but let me start off by just talking about like the history of it, right? So, comic book movies are no different than anything else being adapted from a novel or, other pieces of literature, right? When you get your Hamlets, your Macbeths and stuff, it's the same thing. So what's really happening is we're adapting what I would say more of American mythology into film on the big screen. But the thing is, like what you were talking about, Tim, earlier about like how some of them other movies were just atrocious pre-Blade. What ended up happening was there was no real commitment to them, right? Like they were just throwing it out there like, yeah, the Hulk TV show that did good. Let's just throw something out there. Let's just make a little Hulk TV movie. What is this, Supergirl? All right, yeah, whatever. Let's do that. Oh, people like Christopher Reeve in Superman. All right, Superman, let's do that. And like you even saw some of the Richard Donner movies, like the first one was great. Second one was okay. Then it got progressively worse, right? And then the thing that you have to kind of notice is while Blade was absolutely the saving grace for Marvel, it wasn't the saving grace for all comic book movies. What you needed in addition to, because right after Blade, you still had some Fantastic Four movies, which were kind of wonky. You still had a couple bombs out there. You had just not so great things, but you also had the X-Men in early 2000s. Then you had Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, which is arguably one of the top best superhero movies still to this day. So what you ended up having was a mark of consistency, right? When comic book movies were doing poorly, nobody cared. There was no money in it. There was no investment from the audience. So there's no reason to keep making them. But then you have Blade, then you have Spider-Man, then you have like the X-Men movies, and they're not only making money, but they're also capitalizing on already popular IPs. Spider-Man is probably one of, if not the most popular and recognizable names next to Superman, Batman, and and Wonder Woman or whatever, right? Like that IP has so much heritage and cachet that it doesn't matter who's starring in it. It doesn't matter what the movie's about. You really don't even need trailers. Just say Spider-Man 4 is coming out. People will show up. So This is one of the reasons why, like early in my career, I kind of told people that like there was like this sentiment going around, I want to say like 10 years ago, that there was going to be comic book movie fatigue. And I'm like, that's a myth. It's not true. You're never going to get tired of comic book movies until they start getting bad. When you start getting consistently bad comic book movies, that's when people are not going to want them. And what ends up happening now, because we have two big Plymouths of companies, doing it with Marvel and WB doing DC. What you have here with Marvel is something unprecedented. We have never, ever seen in the creation of film something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you have such
wait, stop right there.
Go ahead.
That's what I was going to tell you. I think the other point, and I agree with everything you said, right? And I'm going to let you finish your point in a second. But for me, right, as a guy that started reviewing movies in 1992, I think the biggest change, the thing that made people stand up and take notice is when Marvel announced, you know what? We're going to create a universe of these characters. And people are like, what the heck are you talking about? And they drew out this plan that will introduce these stories. And you at the beginning was the core, right? So it was Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Hulk, right? And you watch what they did, and I was like, damn, DC, you got, and I remember at the beginning, saying, man, DC should be killing them right now. You got Superman, you got Batman, do the same thing, and you could blow this out. And they were way behind Marvel, and that's why Marvel has perfected it. DC is starting to gain a little traction, and they've got some stuff coming up. But Marvel's idea, that whole concept that we will make a universe. So now everything is a universe. You know, you got Warner Brothers. We're going to have a universe of monster movies, a universe of this and a universe of that. So Kevin Feige and the folks over at Marvel, hats off to you guys. But go ahead, E, and Jim, Charles, you jump in, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, you could have a whole nother show about the history and the dynamics between the creation of a cinematic universe and what Marvel's done versus DC. That, again, is an entire nother, I could do a dissertation on that, basically. But, you know, what I would say to that is the formula with doing a cinematic universe. One, you can't replicate what Marvel did, because what Marvel did was something so organic. They didn't even know what they were doing. Like, they will tell you straight up, Iron Man was kind of a fluke. They was like, yo, we didn't know y'all liked it this much. Okay, let's test some things in Iron Man 2. And then they was like, oh, we got something. Okay, let's keep this going. And they change it up. They're fluid. That's why they don't have a set, pattern that another company can copy, which was the mistake of DC, because Marvel, by the way, was working with one hand behind their back. They didn't even have all the rights to their characters. That's why they had to go get all they B and C level characters, because the other benefit with that is zero expectations. When you have a character like Thor that you haven't seen on screen like that, or Captain America or Iron Man, you're like, all right, let's see what you got. And the fact that you connect all of this, what ends up happening now is you're creating a level of investment for the fan base or for any viewer. Now, when you go watch a Marvel movie, you can't just sit there and be like, okay, I'm done. You got to go back, maybe go watch some of the other ones, maybe start looking for the other things, see how they all connect. Now you 10, 15 movies deep. Ain't no leaving now. You with us now. You in now. So I'm just saying, like, that is something that is one of the reasons why you have this renaissance, because it is attaching and keeping a level of familiarity with the viewers that it's too hard for you to just stop and let go. But it's at the same time welcoming enough to keep on bringing in new audiences.
I see a finger. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say quickly that one of the other things you talked about, Marvel just playing around and not doing something. They introduced something in the very first Iron Man that would become a standard that for all superhero films moving forward now. You got to stay to the end of the film, to like all the credits, because Marvel has trained the audience that we will drop some nuggets in and preview. You give you something along this map. It is fascinating now that when you go to a screening now of movies, the movie is over and people just patiently sit there like,
you sit your butt down.
you might miss something.
Now, they used to do that in the past. They used to do that. Ferris Bueller, they used to do that stuff in the past. Sometimes they would even throw trailers, at the very end. So the fact that they're doing this now,
trailers, because you would have a ad for the next movie at the end of the first movie. So this is all just cyclical things, and we talk about Blade being the one that pushed Marvel forward, but 9 years earlier, you had the Batman franchise that was done. And the problem was, again, you did so many Batman movies until you got to the last few were so hokey that nobody wanted to see them anymore. And then it died out. And so then Blade came in and it was consistent again. And so the lesson to be learned, even from Superman, which was 10 years before Batman, it was good, 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 bad, and then good, 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 bad. So the lesson learned was we need to stay consistent in what we're producing. And so if it comes to a point like with Iron Man, that Iron Man character is dead because we can't make any good stories with it, Marvel has created this, well, we're going to move on to the next hero. It's not all focused on this one person. We keep on moving. And so that keeps your interest going as well. That way they can have the license to be creative, to bring fresh stories in and keep the audience there.
Yep.
So let me ask you a question, because this whole show is me peppering both of you with questions representing the audience, right? I'll jump ahead to one of the more recent films they just put out, The Eternals, right? And one of my issues with The Eternals is that excuse me?
Just one?
Well, no. I'm saying one of the big ones for me is that if you've spent 25 or 26 movies deep going into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? And we've seen, mysticism and science in Doctor Strange. We've seen these guys fighting Thanos. They set that thing up over like 6 or 7 years. We're watching this guy, this extraterrestrial being. And then you come along and give me a film with characters that to me, one of my big complaints is that what universe do they even fit in with any of the other Marvel characters, right? Like, I can't see Spider-Man, Iron Man, Black Panther, Thor, anybody hanging out with the Eternals. And the fact that the Eternals are making jokes like, oh man, Steve Rogers. So I'm like, and they were there watching this whole thing. It made me question, like, how do the Eternals fit into the context of all the other stuff that they have? Because there's no character. Because these were like the Justice League of heroes, and there's nobody on Earth that has powers that can match up with anybody in the Eternals. Well, or are they? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't read the comic books, but again, I mean, come on, man. It was like watching a Marvel Justice League movie. You had Superman in there. You had Wonder Woman in the film. I was like, come on, man. Stop it. Just stop it. Nobody wants to take that.
I think Marvel was very adventurous in putting forth the Eternals. Yeah. I understand what their intentions was to launch the cosmic universe that Marvel hasn't given light to as outside of Guardians of the Galaxy. But I think I've been clear in saying I thought it was a clear misstep in what they were doing with that film and how it should have related to the rest of the universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it was a great misstep, and probably one that they learned from. Let's not say that Marvel has been impervious in what they produce, because a lot of people will tell you Iron Man 3 was terrible. And so Marvel learns, they're smart, that they're not going to be perfect every time. And so the next story will be better. We've got Morbius coming out you talked about jumping forward to Doctor Strange, but Morbius comes out at the beginning of April too. So, I mean, this is a Sony Marvel creation. Who knows? It may be leading a whole new section of Marvel. I'm
not looking forward to Morbius. I'm just letting you know.
That Marvel ain't touching that one. That's all Sony.
That's all Sony?
That's all Sony. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Expect Venom like returns with that one. Or quality, I should say quality.
Which is really ironic, because I've never been a big fan of either the Venoms. I didn't like Venom. Didn't work for me. I'm sorry.
Venom didn't work for me either. One or two.
Charles might have liked Venom. I don't know. But
but To address your question, this was actually a question I asked Kevin Feige directly, like during some press conference or something. And I asked him, I was like, how are you juggling doing stuff like Hawkeye, like these street ground level stuff, but then you blowing up with like Eternals or whatever. And what he had said was just like, this is really just a different way to explain the universe. I mean, we're talking about an entire universe, and it's levels to all of this, right? Like you're just talking about like, hey, this is how the cosmic stuff works. That's all. These celestials, yeah, they make planets, they make life. Oh, this is what happens in other parts of the galaxy. But on the streets, you got this dude named Daredevil running around, fighting crime. So it's really, but then in between all of that, you got the Avengers saving the whole planet, so it's like, it depends on what view and what level you want to go to. And that's where I think some of the uniqueness and the beauty of storytelling comes in. This is world building. The purpose of Eternals, even though I think the initial purpose was to make us care about the characters, which I did not, I think the other purpose was to explain more of the cosmic side of the MCU. See, one thing that you have to understand is like, especially with the Disney Plus shows, which I'm not saying you have to watch, but it does carry some benefit, is that it does expand different aspects that the movies are not going to have time to explain. So for example, when you walk into Doctor Strange 2, you're going to see Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Strange, and they're going to be doing all this magic and stuff. But for a lot of viewers that watched WandaVision, we already have the explanation and the groundwork of how magic works in the MCU. So when we see her doing some wild stuff or creating this and that or whatever, it ain't nothing for us, but it might be new for you. You might be like, yo, where'd she get that red power from? Or what does this mean? Like that information, that supplemental information is provided elsewhere, and it's the same thing with like different movies. I mean, Black Panther by itself, if you think about it, the movie, of course, phenomenal, cultural and all that good stuff. But what it actually did was Black Panther informed the rest of the MCU. Because when you go into like Infinity War or Endgame, and you're sitting here like, yo, how did Tony Stark, Iron Man, get that kind of, nanotech stuff? He got that from Wakanda. He got it from Wakanda because they opened up their technology to the rest of the world. So it's like all these stories they're like chapters into a bigger book. And that's the beauty of what I'm talking about in terms of keeping you invested, because the previous chapters. And if you skipped around, I mean, that's on you. But if you follow in, the story gets richer and richer and richer. And we've never had that. We ain't never had no 26 something plus movies deep, like, I mean, we had a couple Rockies, we got a bunch of Star Wars. Star Wars is probably the closest that we could get to this, but that's all under Disney, and they're doing basically the same formula.
And they're doing the same thing. So they're giving in the Star Wars universe by giving you, like you said, the Disney Plus shows. But it's interesting you would talk about Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch, right? Because you're right. Kevin Feige even talked about that Benedict Cumberbatch or Doctor Strange was supposed to make a cameo appearance in WandaVision, but they scrapped it. These two also fought alongside the rest of the Avengers in Endgame fighting Thanos. So we saw Wanda doing magic on one side of the battle. We saw Strange doing magic on the other side, holding up to Tony Stark, which I thought was a great scene. But to your point, E, and I would acknowledge you're right, that I have faithfully watched every film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it actually helps you out a lot because Marvel has a propensity of bringing storylines back. So I remember watching Endgame, and when we got to, I forget the land where the Soul Stone was, and you saw, what's his name?
Red Skull
character.
Red Skull. I was like, oh, that's what happened to Red Skull from back in
Captain America.
First Avenger. Oh, okay. So you're right. It is something we've never seen before. And I think the phrase you use, world building, is accurate because they had built a cinematic world for us, whether it's extraterrestrial, whether it's Luke Cage in Harlem fighting crime. I've never thought of it about the different levels, but that's absolutely true that the Avengers would be in the middle with people like Daredevil, Jennifer Jones, and all of these guys down here street level. And then, all this stuff that goes on in space, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel, and that whole crew. It's extraordinary. And I predict, honestly, that not only will Marvel not stop making these movies, they'll be making these movies for your son who will grow up one day and be like, oh, snap, Marvel movies.
Yeah.
As long as they got stories to tell, they'll be telling these stories because they're too lucrative for them not to tell these stories. They're $1 billion out the box.
I don't think you realize how true of a statement that is because, like I said earlier, Marvel has been doing everything with one hand behind their back. They have not unleashed their full potential yet. Like the X-Men have not come out yet. The Fantastic Four have not come out yet. So let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you this right here.
You think they will finally get the Fantastic Four right?
Yeah, it's already announced. It's already announced. It's happening.
I'm talking about get it right because I've seen two variations.
Oh, yes. That's
100%.
always been the problem is that when you have interlopers handling your project, they can't do it correctly.
Right.
Now that it's in the hands of the creators, the true creators of the book, Fantastic Four is going to be an awesome movie whenever it gets made because the original creators are involved in making this what it's supposed to be. They have the vision, they have the insight, they know how they can adapt it. I mean, Josh Trank tried to adapt it to current age, and that was just like ludicrous. They know how to make these stories work for where they are because they are comic book writers from the jump. They know what they were doing back then with the comic books, and they know how to translate it into movies. All we're doing is watching a bunch of comic books on screen. And that's what's so great for people like me. I hear Hardison say on Leverage, this is the age of the geek, where back in the day, if you were reading a comic book and now you see it on the screen, this is beautiful. And just like Batman, they finally got Batman to be the world's greatest detective in the last movie. They've been playing with Batman for a long time, but now you got comic book creatives doing the process of making the movie, and this is what you get.
Yep. So I apologize, E. I cut you off because you were about to go into the Fantastic Four and the X-Men.
No, I was just gonna say, like, this is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, they've been running this race with just one leg this whole time, and if you thought they was fast now, they're gonna be like Usain Bolt later because when the Fantastic Four is gonna be an easy $1 billion, especially if they cast the right people. Then you have the X-Men. When that comes out, that's gonna, again, name recognition, the IP, that's gonna be crazy. I'm telling you right now, they have if it's not Secret Wars could be the next $2 billion movie. And just so you know, Secret Wars ain't nothing more than just a fan-gasm of just all your favorite heroes fighting each other for no reason. That's it. For whatever reason, you just gonna have Wolverine fighting Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four fighting this just for no reason. It was one of the best storylines in the comics just to explore what Endgame teased, except now it's just a Royal Rumble of all the superheroes. And I'm gonna tell you this too. And the probably see, if inflation keeps going up, you're probably gonna see the first $3 billion movie when they do, and if they do, X-Men versus the Avengers. It's done. It's done. If they go that route, your eyeballs tell the story. This is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a lot. It's about the storytelling. It's about the investment. It's about the IPs that are involved. I mean, Justice League should have been a $1 billion movie from the jump. There's no reason why it shouldn't have hit $1 billion except for poor execution. And that's going to always be the deterrent if any comic book movie comes out. And I would argue that that's one thing that Marvel has gotten better at, because if you look at like the directorial choices that they've done, they've always had creative differences with some directors, fall in, fall out, whatever. But one of the things that they did that they learned from that DC didn't was they took Joss Whedon, took him, man, you dropped $1 billion with Avengers. We're giving you the keys to the kingdom. You can now explain our whole universe. Mistake. Because then Avengers 2 came out, didn't work out too well. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. came out, didn't work out too well. And it just was not the best formula. That's not what DC tried to do. They tried to do that. But what they did was, hey, Zack Snyder, here you go. Take the keys. We want you to be our Joss Whedon. And they quickly found out that if you put all your eggs in one basket, you can, it's not always going to work out. So Marvel has always learned how to adapt. And DC is finally starting to learn that too. They're just going in a separate route, but they've learned how to adapt by making sure we're telling a consistent story to keep audiences in, but we're getting new, different directors to tell those stories to keep it fresh. And I would say that the reason why this is going to continue, not only because they still got their A+ characters in their back pocket, but I would say they're also going to continue because they push the genres as well. One of the reasons why like something like Captain America, Winter Soldier, Captain America 2 was one of the best movies out there was because of the fact that it finally broke the superhero model mold. And it was just an espionage movie that happened to have a superhero in it, right? That's one of the other reasons why I would argue the Batman is so well received right now, because it's a detective noir movie that happens to have Batman in it, right? So the cool thing about it is this is what Western movies could never do. Western movies, they kind of did it with Gone with the Wind. You took a little Western, but you made it a love story, but then they never really had the flexibility to break out of that mold. A Western is a Western is a Western, but a comic book movie can be anything. It can be a love story. It can be an espionage story.
Comedy like Deadpool.
It could be a comedy. It could be so many different things that there is no real reason for it to fail, except for, like Charles said, lack of if there's inconsistency. If you start, making something serious and then all of a sudden you go wonky with it, get out of here, or vice versa. Keep that same thread, tell it in different versions, and you got a genre that's going to last no different than any other.
Emmanuel and Noisette, E-Man, Charles Kirkland Jr. I brought some real geeks together today, man. They are breaking it down, man. So let's get back to the title of what I talked about. Going forward now, as folks are coming back to theaters in maybe larger numbers, the schedule is going to open up a little bit more. Will these films, these comic superhero films, I mean, I know there are other films that are going to make money, but I think now, and I think you may have answered this question, but I'm going to ask it a different way. Will these films continue to be perpetual billion-dollar films? Because, like, for instance, Doctor Strange is going to make $1 billion. You don't have to tell me that, because looking at that trail, I'm like, that's $1 billion. What else does Marvel have? I know Black Panther, is that in November?
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about Black Panther because nobody knew 4 years ago when this movie came out that Chadwick Boseman wouldn't be around for all 3 installments of this film. And Marvel has had to reconstitute or figure this whole thing out on the fly as they were doing this. So we all agree that Doctor Strange they're gonna print money on Doctor Strange. But what are you guys thinking about Black Panther 2 coming later this year?
Charles,
I think essentially it all comes down to the writing. It all comes down to what direction they're going in. And the problem is they're divulging so much from the comic book, having when they said that they weren't going to cast T'Challa, a lot of people are like, well, how can you have Black Panther? So because they're diverging so much from the comics, from the source material, the question is, what is it going to look like? What is it going to be? And how's it going to work? So yes, there's a lot of questions going around about Black Panther, and I'm not one to say blindly that everything Marvel does is great. So because we've already talked about that it isn't, So yeah, there's a big concern about what they're doing with Black Panther, and we'll see how it goes.
We have the leader.
I tell you one thing: people are going to turn out for it to see what happens,
right?
and make their decisions after that. So the problem won't be Black Panther 2. The problem will be will there be a Black Panther 3?
There's going to be a Black Panther. There's going to be a Black Panther 3. But I was going to say the leader of the recast T'Challa movement happens to be on the show today. Emmanuel, what are you thinking about Black Panther 2?
So I'll echo a lot of stuff that Charles said. I mean, obviously I won't go too much into the recast T'Challa stuff because that's literally a whole nother dissertation, and you can go to my YouTube channel to watch my hours and hours of conversations about that. But I would say my expectations, keep in mind, Fandango ran a poll not too long ago that asked, like, what was your most anticipated movie? Black Panther won, hands down. This was only just a couple months ago. So people are looking forward to that. Now, one thing I did do was I ran anonymously through some other networks. I ran 2 polls where I asked audiences, what are you looking forward to in Black Panther 2? Is it Shuri, or somebody else taking the mantle? Is it, the villain and Namor, or is it like what they're gonna do with Chadwick or T'Challa not being there? That was the number one answer. The number one thing people are interested in is, what are y'all gonna do without the main character, and how are you gonna pay tribute to this guy? So now that leads into a more sticky situation, because some people are very concerned, including myself, that Marvel might take Chadwick Boseman's passing and use it as a plot device into their fictional storytelling and use that as a selling point. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, that's rather unsettling if you do that, because it's like, yo, whether you mean to or not, even if your hearts are in the right place, you're profiting off of this man's death. That's not really cool. And it's fiction. You literally have a million and other ways to do things instead of that. So you do have a segment of the population that is kind of like, if I even hear that T'Challa is being killed off or whatever, I ain't going to see this movie. So what this kind of tells me is that if they go that route, there's definitely going to be that initial onset of people. It's going to make a good amount of money. I think it'll probably make at least 800 million easy. It could crack $1 billion. Is it going to crack that 1.3 billion that the first one did? This is where my doubt comes in, because I don't think that what the first movie did is it had repeat viewings. Right. I personally bought out a theater to go see it with my community. Then I went to see it again with my family. Then I went to see it again with my friend. Like, I saw this movie 3 times and happily shelled out the dough for it. And other people did as well. They wanted to bring their aunties and their grandmas to come and see this. I don't know if you get that same enthusiasm, especially if potentially they're killing this guy off, re-triggering people, because Chadwick's passing was kind of, sensitive for a lot of people.
Yes, it was.
Is that something you really want to go back and see? Like, is that something you want to keep reliving? I don't know. So I do think it's going to make its money. I do have confidence that Ryan Coogler is a genius. I have confidence that Marvel knows the potential with this franchise. I've heard that they've actually doubled the budget. The first movie had 100 million. This one supposedly has 200 million, which shout out to Black creatives in that case. But it's going to be shiny. It's going to be flashy. I just don't know if it's going to have the legs to be as great as the first one. So extreme wait and see. It's going to be very interesting to see.
All right.
And last thing to say about it, the first Black Panther was a celebratory experience for the Black culture.
Yeah.
And so as Sade say, it's never as good as the first time. So when we go back the second time, it's not going to be as celebratory as it was the first time. So Marvel really has to build a good story that's going to resonate with the community for it to do the same kind of business that it did the last time.
All right. So
I'll recast T'Challa.
I was just going to jump in, and we're going to get back to this, but I got 2 pieces of breaking news that have just happened.
Oh, snap.
You saw my face. One, Sunshine PR, which has been repping the Golden Globes for about 12 years, has dropped them as a client today. So the Golden Globes, they thought that this whole movement where we would add a couple of Black members and try to reconstitute, not working. So that's number one. So that's huge, and that's leading on, that's trending big time. And second of all, baseball is back. So while we were on the show, they struck an agreement. So opening day is April the 7th. So we are on the precipice of having baseball now. For somebody young and nerd like Emmanuel, it might not be big news that they got two teams in his city, one on the south side, one on the north side. So he might be a baseball fan, but Charles and I, yeah, this is huge news. So having said all of that, and no reaction from E, we've got about about 20 minutes left in this show, man. And I wanna go back and kind of look at this. So we talked about the genesis of not just the superhero genre in the 90s moving forward. We talked about the explosion of the cinematic universes. DC finally seeming to catch traction with Matt Reeves, the Batman. I had a buddy of mine call me up today who's old school, and he absolutely could not get with the Batman at all. He thought that, without the origin story, I'll just say it doesn't resonate for everybody. Like when I went to see it at a screening, I really liked it a lot. And going into that, Charles knows how my love for The Dark Knight and what Christopher Nolan did. And even I was like, you know what? I like this version of Batman, this Batman right here, because in The Dark Knight, that was more of a Joker story than that was a Batman story, right? Batman had to react to everything that the Joker did. I loved how Matt Reeves set it up at the very beginning, that the first time we saw that bat signal and you saw the criminals running, they was like, oh damn, Batman is coming. I was like,
that was dope. That was dope.
Batman is a thug in this movie. And I like what they did with his character by the third act of the film in humanizing him more. So I think Matt Reeves did an extraordinary job, and I think it's the first great movie of 2022. And whether or not Warner Brothers will bring this movie back and try to put folks up for awards later in the year, that kind of remains to be seen. But it's going to make a lot of money for those guys. And if Warner Brothers is smart, they should use this along with the other films that are in this universe, The Flash and Aquaman and all these other guys. And you need to really reconstitute your universe and kind of go in the direction that DC has gone, that Marvel has gone, in order to kind of really maximize this storytelling. You've got to, I think DC has been very inconsistent, that they'll find a film or two that works, and then they'll have a couple that drop off, and then they haven't still figured out how to wrap their arms around all these elements and then weaponize them to get them out to audiences to make them work, much in the same way that Marvel has. Marvel, to your point, E, they kept trying stuff, adapting on the fly until they sort of figured it out. And then when they did figure it out, I would say circa, you talked about Captain America Civil War. I thought that was great. Winter Soldier was fantastic. That was fantastic. And then by the time we got this 4 hours of, actually it might have been closer to 5 hours of Endgame and Infinity War, that was perfect. That was great how Marvel set that whole thing up, man. So to your point, man, there's a lot of positivity. It's something we've never seen. Before Marvel came along, the longest franchise in Hollywood history would probably been James Bond, from like 62 all the way up to now, right? Even though they kept changing out who Bond was, it was always James Bond making these movies. Marvel has come along and just smashed that. And, we're looking at how many more movies this year? Is it 3 more coming out this year or 4?
You got 3 more.
3 more this year. And then you got 4 next year.
I don't know about next year, but I know you got 3 more, and you got some Disney Plus series coming out too.
Yeah, your Disney Pluses.
Right. So by the end of the year, we'll be, I want to say, were we at 26 or 27 this year?
I lost count.
No, I didn't lose count. I keep count. I think we're going to be close. We're going to be right on the doorstep of 30 films before we get to the end of the year. I'm going to double check right now, but y'all guys, you talked about Black Panther and the challenges that they have with that character. I believe at some point, and I know this will probably make E happy, that they're going to probably have to recast this character.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Because I'm convinced that at the end
can't live in a world with no Black Panther.
We'll have a resurrected or a return T'Challa to take over the mantle of Black Panther. He may not be in the movie as it goes on because it's Wakanda forever, but he'll be there at the end. We'll get a tease of Black Panther return. I'll
take a tease in Doctor Strange.
Black Panther from another universe.
That's what I'm saying. I'll take it. If we're doing a multiverse of madness, just show me another one. Just show me another one. I know he exists, and I'll be like, okay, all right. Like, you know, because my main concern is I don't want them to disrespect or play down the level of importance and significance that T'Challa specifically carries. I mean, this is a character that was created literally for Black representation. He was the first leading Black character in mainstream comic books during the civil rights era. Like, because we had were the shucking and jiving supporting side Black characters.
Don't
he was the first one
like that.
Was that? No, well, I mean, you know how Luke Cage was back then. And Falcon was just a sidekick. You know, this was the first one that was supposed to be like our Superman. Like, all the other Black superheroes should come after him in his light, you know, a king and reserved and like powerful and smart. Having him go against the Fantastic Four, that's like having somebody fight the Justice League and hold their own. Like, that was a big deal. So, you know, I just don't want Marvel to like be like, okay, here goes Star-Lord T'Challa, or here goes some T'Challa and he's on the side, like, he's a supporting character. No, like, give us that franchise player back, because that's what he is. He is a franchise player.
Okay, let me jump in real quick. 27 films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They budgeted these 27 films at $5 billion. Between 5.2 to 5.3 is the budget for 27 movies. Marvel has made almost $26 billion on 27 films. So
that's a good return.
You don't even have to really be a math major to understand that Marvel is literally almost averaging $1 billion over 27 movies. Now, let me say that at home, because I realize it's inflation, right? So people are like, you know, in Gone with the Wind numbers, it's only $2.99. Well, let me tell you something. If you take any head of any studio, you put them all together in a room and said, hey, man, if I was able to make 20 movies with you, and you had $20 billion or $19 billion and some change, would you take that? And every one of them would break their shoulder being the first one to get their hand up. So the fact that Kevin Feige, who I'm not trying to be in anybody's pocket, right? But Charles, how much money can they be paying this dude for what he's done for those guys?
Not enough.
Not enough.
But to what E said,
enough.
We're looking at $1.5-2 billion of film before we close out this year. I mean, those films will be making about that much if they're done correctly.
I mean, think about it like this. Think about it like this.
They have left is only $1.5 billion.
No, I'm saying each one of those movies that's coming out is $1.5 to $2 billion a piece.
Yeah.
Wow.
And think about it like in any movie, if you're walking into a studio and you say, hey, look, give me X amount of dollars, the expectation is you at least make 2.5 times more than the budget. That's the baseline of saying that's profitable, that's successful, because of course you got to factor in marketing they don't talk about, but that's a good chunk of money too. So you have to make some profit off of that. You're talking about movies that cost them $100 million, at most $200 million, and they giving back $1 billion or more. Yeah,
they're literally making on average a 5-time return. Now when I say on average, that's on average of 27 movies. That's not like a fluke, like that happened 4 or 5 times. Over almost 30 movies, they're averaging 5 times the return. So, hey man, give me $1. I'm gonna give you $5 back. Wow, that is extraordinary, man. Extraordinary. All right, so before we got about 10 minutes left, man, I need some comment on this. Money Magazine ran an article on the 5 richest superheroes of all time, and which the first thing I told Charles was like, based on what? These things aren't real. How would Money Magazine do this? Coming in at number 5, Emma Frost, with a net worth of $1 to $3 billion, a reformed villain from the X-Men franchise. Any comment on the wealth of the number 5 richest superhero of all time?
She's not even the richest one in the X universe. So okay.
I was gonna say like that must be an old list.
Well, no. It is an old list, but she's still number 5, and you're correct. She is not the richest one in the X-Men universe because that's number 4, who is Charles Xavier, who comes in between $3 to $5 billion.
Still kind of on the low side, but okay, because he's funding everything in the X-Men universe, mansions, and they got planets now for X-Men. So I mean, hey, okay. Man, y'all put way too much into this, man. But okay, so coming in at number 3 is the star who's got the latest film out, coming in at $9.2 billion. It is Bruce Wayne, the Batman.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Now, Wayne Enterprises has an annual revenue of $31 billion. I was like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, he built the city, like his family. He got that legacy money. That's one of the reasons I say, like, Batman's superpower is really white privilege. Like, my man has made money through his legacy, and it's only because of that he's able to do what he does. He got found. Listen, you could even do it a different way. Wayne had the Wayne Foundation, the way it's set up, right? He has hospitals, right? He has school, he has all these businesses. He's the one putting people in hospitals because he's beating up thugs, put them in the hospitals. Okay.
So he's not only building a hospital, but he's keeping it.
He's self-funding everything.
When parents lose their children, the children go into Wayne's orphanage. It goes to Wayne's schools. So I mean, yeah, he's funding himself.
What don't he own? What doesn't he own in Gotham City?
All right, so I remember one time in one of the Batman movies, I think it might have been a Dark Knight, and somebody asked him what was a superpower, and he was like, No. Was it Wayne that asked, or was
that
it
was
Iron
a Batman?
Yeah,
no, that was Justice League.
Justice League.
Yeah, my superpower is money.
I'm rich.
All right, so coming in at number 2, and this is pretty interesting because it's literally the same character in a different universe, is Tony Stark with Stark Industries with a $12.4 billion net worth. Now, interestingly enough, while his personal wealth is higher than Bruce Wayne's personal wealth, the wealth of Wayne Enterprises eclipsed the wealth of Stark's Industries. Stark's Industries is only worth $20 billion. Wayne Enterprises is worth $31 billion. How does that equate that his personal income is higher, but the income of the company that funds the city is a little lower?
That's tax deductions for you, because he be funding the Avengers, so he gets to like reduce that cost, and he donates to his own charity, which is a damage control, or whatever the Stark is. Whenever the Avengers make a mess, he got a whole corporation to clean up the city, fix places and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just tax evasion. That's all. Don't worry about that.
So wait a minute. So one question that came up in Captain America, or actually Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when he became Captain America, was when he went to get a loan one time, and the guy was like, "You don't have any income." Is Tony Stark supplementing and paying and taking care of Thor, Captain America, all the rest of these people in the Avengers?
Well, how are these guys? Cap has his own money, but I mean, Tony Stark is paying for the facilities that they reside in, and whatever meals are being served at Avengers compound. That's Tony Stark. Yes.
Let's also not forget, little history lesson. Cap gets to benefit from the GI Bill.
Yep.
Okay. That a lot of black soldiers did not get to benefit from.
How long has he been benefiting off the GI Bill?
I mean, he been dead since like the 1940s. Like,
Yeah.
He a veteran. I'm just saying. Cap gonna get all them benefits. He can go to school for free. He get free lunch, free housing, free everything.
And his Cap is he's a veteran. Wow. All right. And then coming in at number one, and this makes perfect sense, but I remember I said this. I was like, T'Challa, who has a net worth of $90.7 trillion. And I said this to Charles. I said, why is T'Challa so rich? And he said one word: vibranium.
Vibranium. Yeah, that's it.
They were selling vibranium for $10,000 an ounce.
Just a little sliver. A sliver.
Yeah.
Why do you think they was hunting down Claw in Black Panther? Because he stole money.
He stole a lot.
Was a gangster hit.
So wait a minute. Let me make sure I get this right for the people at home who may not know this. Are you telling me that T'Challa, the Black Panther, the King of Wakanda, has more worth than all of the superheroes combined? By himself, he's worth more than all these dudes.
Yes.
Where do you think Tony Stark got his nanotech from? Where did he get it from? T'Challa.
How come this message ain't getting out on Black History Month, man, about the wealth of T'Challa?
I thought it was common knowledge. That vibranium is no joke. Like think about it like this. Like if you were in medieval times or whatever, and you had access to like steel, not even medieval times, caveman times, but you had steel, whatever advanced material you have the leverage, you have the advantage over the rest of the world. And Wakanda is sitting on a meteor the size of a mountain of vibranium. So while they sitting there chipping away for a little, to sell that little ounce, they selling an ounce of crack of vibranium to you for like 20,000 a piece. That's nothing for them. They good for like eons. I mean, I'm not even gonna get into the comics and how deep they get. They so rich they go off to another planet. Like Earth is too little for them. It's too little.
All right. Can I ask one question from Black Panther? And I guess you'll say it's the multiverse and they'll be able to fix it. How will the Black Panther, whoever that person is, be able to be put into that deep sleep? Because we normally would grab one of these little flowers, crush it up, and create the stuff that they drink, and then they pass out and they end up in the but Killmonger burned all of that in Black Panther. So again, I didn't read the comics. I'm sure you guys know or have an idea of how we will be able to recreate that. Anybody?
Yes, there's actually a book that came out, and I know I'm getting super nerdy with this. It's called The Wakanda Files, and it's a MCU canon book. I actually have it here somewhere. I know I saw you looking for it. I'm like, well, I could pull it out if y'all want, but no. So basically, what happens is that, and again, we have to wait for Black Panther 2 to see how they rationalize this. But through T'Challa's blood, Shuri was able to resynthesize the formula, and she was able to recreate the herb that way.
Okay, we got a minute and a half.
It's called reverse engineering. Is what I mean. She does a lot of it. That's how she fixed Winter Soldier. She reverse engineered whatever the problem was to go back to the source and fix it.
Yep.
We have a minute and a half left. I just want to say how awesome it is that the richest character, the smartest universe, the most advanced universe are all brown people. It's all brown people. It's just amazing to me in this comic world that you guys are like, oh man, I thought this was second nature. I thought y'all knew this. I did not know about $10,000 an ounce for vibranium. I did not know.
I'm gonna hold my promise to you, Tim. The best thing you could do now, because I understand trying to keep up with comics is very scary. It's overwhelming. You're talking about stuff from the 60s on, right? The best friend you can have is YouTube. I would highly recommend a YouTube channel called Comics Explained, or Comic Storian. Comic Storian is a YouTube channel that will read back the comic stories to you in a dramatic fashion for entertainment value. Comic Explain will actually, and it's a brother too, he will actually explain these things in layman's terms for people that don't read comics. So he'll tell you the story about Black Panther and X-Men, and then he'll be like, oh, here's the backstory too. So by the time you get done with the video, which are like 20 minutes or less, you can come out being as nerdy and expert like anybody else that had read it. And can't nobody tell you different. So I would just highly recommend for anybody watching, don't feel intimidated. YouTube is your friend. They have plenty of channels out there that will explain the comic stories and get you caught up expeditiously, so that way you don't feel completely left out of the loop.
All right. So before we go, this is the last comic book that I bought. Oh, dang, I can't see it because I got a little stupid filter on my phone.
Put it in front of your face. Oh no. Oh, okay.
There it is.
Okay.
This is the last comic book I bought. And the reason I bought it is because I knew Queen Regina King was adapting this. Bitterroot is amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So so don't laugh at me when I say I don't read a lot of comic books. I don't read a lot of comic books, but when I do pick one up, it's going to be fire.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing is that we've talked about Marvel and DC. There are a lot of independents that are coming out with things, and there's a lot of movies that you've watched and you probably didn't know that it came from a comic book or a graphic novel. And for instance, Two Guns, the movie that you diss about Denzel Washington, that was a comic book. And
Road to Perdition.
I mean, The Losers. All these movies that have been out and been successful, there are a lot more comic book movies out there than you know of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it there, man, because we run out of time. But Emmanuel, Noisette, we need to get you back, brother. I will see you in LA this weekend. Charles can't come, so we'll just have some more laughs and nerd out. And I'll get some more. You got some more comic tips for me, right?
I got everything you need.
All right. We're going to hang this weekend. Charles, feel sad, man. As we tell everybody every week on the show, man, please find something amazing to watch on film. We've talked about comic book stories. Please go back and revisit both the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and if you got HBO Max, you can revisit all of the stuff that's on in the DC universe as well. Until next time, man, 494 is a wrap. Fellas, thank you. You take care, and we will talk and see you soon. Guys, enjoy your weekend.